Live from San Francisco on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network, you are listening to Wrestling Observer Live with your hosts, Bryan Alvarez and Mike Sempervive.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sunday, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. We got a lot to get into today. It was a very busy weekend. We had 2 big pay-per-view shows last night. Amazingly, nothing on a Saturday. All that changes this Saturday. We had the NXT UK show, NXT UK Takeover, which was a very good show, I thought. Apparently, not everybody agreed. Obviously, the Tyler Bate-Jordan Devlin match was awesome. I thought that the main event was very good. Dave thought it sucked. What did you think about Walter versus Joe Coffey? We could talk about that show here today. As well as last night, Tessa Blanchard ended up with the Impact World Championship, the first woman to win the Men's World Championship for any nationally televised organization in the United States. So that was last night as well, and she had a very, very busy weekend. We could tell you about that. So those are the big show stories here today. We got some big changes coming to Ring of Honor. We have got Marty Scurll re-signing with the company, and he's also joining the booking team. We'll tell you how that's all going to shake out. And obviously, we've got a Ring of Honor NWA working agreement starting back up, as we had NWA stars on Ring of Honor. And, of course, Marty Scurll is on the NWA Power Show as well. So there is that. Saudi Arabia. WWE in Saudi Arabia. We don't know the exact date for sure, but it appears to be February 27th. And there's also been a February 20th date bandied about, but I believe it's going to be the 27th. And it looks like they're going back to Saudi Arabia. And if you recall, when the last Saudi Arabia show occurred, there were a lot of wrestlers who were claiming they were never going to go back. And my guess is that they're all going to go back. But that looks like the next date, which is about a month and a half away from WrestleMania. So these Saudi shows are always WrestleMania caliber shows because it's the biggest money show that they do. So it'll be interesting to see what the matches are for Saudi Arabia and what the matches are for WrestleMania. They got to build up both largely at the same time. Back in a minute to talk about all of this. Wrestling Observer Live.
You are listening to Wrestling Observer Live with Bryan Alvarez and Mike Sempervive on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. A controversial weekend for Tessa Blanchard ended with her winning Impact Wrestling's World Championship at last night's Hard to Kill pay-per-view. Blanchard won the Impact World title, defeating Sami Callihan in the main event of the show. Finishing sequence saw her hit 2 Canadian Destroyers and a hammerlock DDT to win the title. I remember back in the day when one guy did the Canadian Destroyer. Now everybody does it, including Piper Niven on the UK show. And, I mean, I shouldn't say including Piper Niven because, I mean, we've had Ricky Morton do the Canadian
Dustin
Destroyer.
Rhodes.
Dustin is doing it as part of his comeback now, of all things.
On the apron.
Blanchard gave a speech to the crowd after the show went off the air. Earlier in the weekend, prior to winning the World Championship, the first woman to win the Men's World Championship in a major U.S. organization with national television, she tweeted, "Hey, women, try supporting one another. Cool things happen." So, momentarily, I guess it was, it started with Allison Kay. Allison Kay sent out a tweet that says, "Remember when you spat in a black woman's face and called her the N-word in Japan? Was that supporting women?" The audacity of this tweet. Tessa then responded, "Not true. That's my statement, and the most attention I will give it because of how actually ridiculous it is." Chelsea Green then tweeted, "You've constantly put down, bullied, and belittled countless female coworkers, including me. Is that support?" Blanchard then responded, "I have never been anything but kind to you. I've dealt with mean girls since I started. I'm not saying I'm a saint, but I've had my ups and downs. I've made silly decisions such as life. You have zero merit in your comments. Instead, putting me down here for a little clout, you've got my number." La Rosa Negra then wrote, Sienna and Chelsea Green, thank you so much. That story, yes, that happened in Japan 2017. Tessa Blanchard does not remember it. Can I? I'm not a mean girl with my coworkers around the world. Be kind. Hashtag racist is not ridiculous. It's a sickness. She is the wrestler that Blanchard allegedly spat on and called the N-word. Then Shanna wrote in support of La Rosa Negra. Blanchard did more nasty stuff in Japan. Never forget. Practice what you preach, sweetheart. I stand by, I guess, whatever her Twitter handle is here. She's a loving, fun person who would never disrespect anybody. Much love to you, Rosa. And then more jumped in as well. All day long, there were people going after Tessa Blanchard. And Tessa did her statement, and that's all she did. And then she won the title, and then she did a speech about how mentally strong she was. So this was quite the weekend for her. And all I can tell you is I wasn't there in Japan. I don't know what happened. But a lot of people came out on Twitter saying that it did happen. And it is no mystery that Tessa Blanchard was not signed to a lot of different places because of attitude issues. And how deep those attitude issues went, how much those promotions knew about whatever, I don't know. I just know that as far as in-ring talented female wrestlers, she is one of the best in this entire country. And she could not get a developmental deal with WWE, and she didn't end up in a lot of other places as well. And they ended up signing her to Impact Wrestling. And it's not like nobody there knew all of these stories. It's not like there weren't people working there that had witnessed stories. But they decided that we have the best working American female wrestler, and we're going to go all the way with her. And they did. And that's the story.
It is. Have you had a chance to see the match yet? I know you hadn't as of last night with
I
Dave
have not
doing
seen the
show.
match.
I've seen it. Impact is truly the land of the misfit toys, isn't it? I know this is probably supposed to be a great crowning achievement for Tessa. It really just made me think more, and I didn't have a chance to see the whole show, so take this for what it's worth. You know, I didn't get a chance to see the show as it rolled along in context, but just watching the main event, more than anything, I was just kind of stuck with the fact that Sami Callihan's been the world champion there, and now he's lost it to Tessa Blanchard. The match wasn't really that good. It was a garbage match. It wasn't bad. It was the typical overcomer. Sami Callihan is gross and does a lot of gross things, and he had it on 11 yesterday, as well he should have, with Tessa Blanchard doing everything he could to just be the slimiest, worst guy in that ring he could be, and Tessa, of course, fighting back out of all of it. But there is still a level, even with what we know about fighters and women competitors and athletes and your Kayla Harrisons of the world and your Ronda Rouseys and Amanda Nunez's or whoever you want to put, even though we know how great some of them could be, this match was almost a bridge too far, as far as he's laying in so much punishment at times. It's like, really, dude, what's the matter with you? Because at this point, it's like, any world champion anywhere. In theory, if I'm supposed to be looking at this as a world champion, an epic world championship moment, even though it's got Sami Callihan and Tessa Blanchard in it, it ain't cutting it for me. And it didn't do it for me. It was an okay match. I know the story they were trying to tell, and I'm sure to the fan base that it was going after, the people that were there seemed to really be into it. But I think as you expand out of the very small base that is looking at this, I don't think people are looking at it with kind eyes. And I think with what the weekend had and what it entailed for Tessa Blanchard, horrible timing for Impact indeed, certainly, but it just is not going to make anything any more flowery about it either. I mean, there were just no good tidings at all to me about last night's match, including her post-match promo, which really, they kept her quiet all weekend long doing media. For her to say anything afterwards except for, Forget about even saying I'm sorry. Just don't say anything at all. Probably would have been the best case. To me, like everything about this weekend just kind of buried Tessa and Impact further. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
So this person here, in other news from the weekend, says, is Marty Scurll going to be the key that links all promotions together, Ring of Honor, AEW, NWA, and New Japan? Well, Marty Scurll re-signed with Ring of Honor. He is joining the booking team. And Dave Meltzer added the most lucrative deal in company history. He said it was main roster money. WWE main roster money. And wow. You can think about all the guys that signed to WWE that are in NXT who are not making main roster money. Scurll's ROH deal expired in November. Continue to work dates for the company as the two sides work towards the new contract. One of the more surprising aspects, it says, is the 31-year-old is joining the booking team alongside Hunter Johnson effective immediately. Mike Johnson, PW Insider, reported Scurll was heavily involved in the creative for both the company's shows this past weekend and the upcoming free February 9th show in Baltimore, which was his idea. Delirious will remain with the company. We did get rave reviews for the shows this weekend. And Scurll will be able to work with the NWA, where he's involved in an angle with world champion Nick Aldis. I presume this text message sender here was talking about last night's Observer Radio, where Dave noted that Scurll wants to try to get a deal worked out between AEW and Ring of Honor, and how Scurll can also work for New Japan. Now, with all of that information here, I mean, the idea that he is going to be the key that links all of these promotions together, I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves the way that some people got ahead of themselves with the Jericho-Tanahashi situation and the stipulations of their match leading into the Tokyo Dome. Marty Scurll is on the booking team, and Delirious is no longer considered like the head booker. And Delirious had been doing that job for well over a decade. He'd booked like 400 television tapings and pay-per-views. It is a completely thankless job. No matter what you do, it's not quite as thankless as like trying to book Raw and SmackDown, but it's up there. Because instead of a Vince McMahon, you've got a Sinclair. And there's only so much that you can do with what you've got. And he will be continuing to do the job in a non-head booker capacity. We'll tell you about that and more after the break. Wrestling Observer Live.
You are listening to Wrestling Observer Live with Bryan Alvarez and Mike Sempervive on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also WrestlingObserver.com. So back to the Marty Scurll thing. So yes, he wants to get Ring of Honor and AEW together. And he's working for NWA. And he's probably going to be doing stuff for New Japan. I don't even know what that entails. I mean, I don't know what the New Japan and Ring of Honor relationship is at this exact moment. I don't know if he's going to sign a separate contract with New Japan like guys like Jericho and Moxley have done. But, starting with the Ring of Honor and AEW, I mean, right now, there's no argument that AEW is a stronger promotion. They've got national television on TNT. And yes, ROH is on a bunch of Sinclair stations, but, these stations, it depends on where you are. Some of these shows air at like 1 o'clock in the morning. TNT is obviously much stronger. And the first question is, Marty Scurll can want these companies to work together, and obviously the elite loves Marty Scurll. But does AEW want to work with Ring of Honor? And does Ring of Honor want to work with AEW? I'm sure that based on the talent roster that AEW has, Ring of Honor would love to use those guys. You got to think about this from the AEW side. What benefit are we going to get from working with the Ring of Honor? There's some very talented people that work in Ring of Honor that if you had a working relationship, they could do AEW. But at the same time, that means that your guys have to go to Ring of Honor. And you've got a promotion that is very much about win-loss records. And we already saw this weekend that MJF is finishing up with MLW. This was bound to happen at some point. There were people that had these deals that allowed them to work elsewhere. But, As things go on with AEW, I think you're going to be seeing less and less of that. I mean, I don't think they want their guys doing stuff on their television and maybe amassing a win-loss record or going on a losing streak or whatever, and then going to another company that has national television, and maybe they're doing jobs, or maybe they're getting wins, or however the thing works. I mean, this is not an easy thing to just say, oh, it's best for the fans that we get people from Ring of Honor on AEW TV and vice versa. I mean, this is a business here. I mean, that's one of the things, that's one of the hurdles, and there's many hurdles, by the way, between trying to get New Japan and AEW working together. We've been talking about this for months. So, yes, I mean, I've said this before. There are people in every company that would love for everybody to work together. But there's also people at the very, very top, and they have to look at all of these things from a business perspective. How does this help us? How does this not help us? Is this worth it? And I don't think this is going to be just, oh, man, Marty Scurll's on the ROH booking team, and he's working with NWA and New Japan, and he wants to get AEW involved, and maybe we're going to have this dream scenario of all of these promotions working together to take on WWE. I just would not get your hopes up right now.
No, it's fun to tease it. For video viewers over my right shoulder here, there's a Pro Wrestling USA program up with Kamala and Sergeant Slaughter on the cover, and that sounded like a pretty good co-promotional idea, and any connection that AEW and ROH would have, I don't think would end in such a horrible and disastrous way, but I don't think it would ultimately end any differently either, because what benefit is it to the Khan family or to Sinclair Broadcasting that these two places work with each other and work together? ROH, if there's somebody there that feels as though they got fleeced with the elite plucking Gary Juster's brain and using ROH to help get themselves a show on WGN America, a pre-show and a pay-per-view that was co-produced by Ring of Honor. I mean, they had a company that went into direct business with them and has hurt them and has had to cause them to spend a lot of money. And all of that business stuff that you talked about, as much as the fantasy booking is fantastic, I think what was a better thing if you're looking for something to feel passionate and feel excited about is after such a malaise that ROH was in, after so many missteps, whether it be at their own hand or whether it be things forced upon them corporately or from other outside influences, that malaise, it feels as though after this weekend, that fog has now lifted. And at least there seems to be a new start. Whether it's the best start in the world or not, I don't know. But when you have Roosh and Dragon Lee is going to jump on board, Marty Scurll is sticking around, and he's going to be able to work in other places, which opens up other, at least prospective opportunities and fun fantasy things. If you're a Ring of Honor fan who has been, in the doldrums for a while, it gives you some life. It gives you something to think about and feel happy about. So I think this is a good thing. You did mention that this deal with Marty Scurll is being rumored as being, now, is this through Ring of Honor? The money is WWE main roster, or he's got the potential to make that money with this money and other money?
That's the contract that he was signed to from Ring of Honor.
If this is the case, Marty Scurll, and we'll have to see how this whole story plays out, but Marty Scurll having a deal that pays him WWE main roster money and still gives him the opportunity to sling deals with New Japan and anywhere else he wants to go is, I don't know if that's the sweetest of the sweetheart deals yet. I don't know if Jericho's probably got a better one because he's Chris Jericho, but I mean, of all of them, that's an amazing
well,
deal.
let's not get ahead of ourselves here. So it may not be that he can do whatever he wants. I mean, right now, Ring of Honor officially, I mean, I don't know if this has changed of late because there hasn't been a lot of work
between
the
back.
two.
Let me.
Well, hold on.
Go on.
Ring of Honor is working with New Japan and NWA right now. So he can do both of those things. Now, if something happens tomorrow and the Ring of Honor NWA association falls apart, I mean, there's a chance that he's done with NWA. This may not be like he can just do whatever he wants on top of making all this money for Ring of Honor.
Well, that's what I was going to do. I was going to amend that to at least say that he's got the ability to work for these other companies, relatively unencumbered. I'm sure ROH has got, points on his, North American rights and the final say on if something's going to happen like WrestleMania weekend or something like that. Obviously, I understand that, but, the ability to at least double, triple, quadruple, quintuple dip, through a bunch of different companies while you're in a position of relative power, with Ring of Honor it is a hell of a deal. And one of the, again, if people want to say anything, people can say anything they want about AEW opening up, but it is going to make a lot of people and has made people a lot of money and has certainly shifted the landscape.
So this person here says, I hope Marty as the head booker can fix some of the issues in Ring of Honor, the company that I once used to love. Well, it's 2020, and the ROH that a lot of people used to love, I mean, this is early 2000s Ring of Honor, mid-2000s Ring of Honor.
The kids who grew up at that time are now facing that nostalgia, looking back 20 years and going, I want that back.
Well, it's not just that. Back. Listen, this is a totally different business now. And one of the things about Ring of Honor that everybody loved was they believed that the actual best workers in the U.S. were working in a Ring of Honor. And they were tearing it down and doing all of these great matches. And here's the thing. Let's say that last week, okay, maybe 2 weeks ago, whatever, let's say that Sinclair decided, you know what, man, look at this AEW. They're doing $900,000 on TNT and 100,000 pay-per-view buys. We're not doing anything close to that. Like, all right, you know what? Let's pour some money into this. But this is purely hypothetical, by the way. Let's just say they said that, and they decided we are now going to open up. Sinclair's loaded, okay? They can sign some big money deals. So let's say that they decided to do that. Well, guess what? Little late. Look at everybody who's been signed to All Elite Wrestling and WWE and NXT and NXT UK. They can decide that they want to spend all the money that they want to spend. But guess what? What are they spending that money on? Luckily, Marty Scurll's deal was coming due, and Bandito decided that he was going to re-sign. And there are others out there, don't get me wrong. But if you're looking at which companies have the greatest talent on the planet in them right now, it's like you got New Japan, and those guys' deals aren't coming up anytime soon. And you've got, like, WWE is loaded up on everybody, whether it's WWE UK, NXT, or Raw or SmackDown. And AEW is loaded up on everybody. Mm-hmm. So, in order for Ring of Honor to become what Ring of Honor used to be, which is the one promotion where all of the best workers, they go there. I mean, you're going to have to expect that Sinclair is going to be willing to pay $1 million a year to like all of these guys, and probably a lot more than that because WWE is throwing around a ton of money. This is just not going to happen anytime soon, and maybe ever. And keep in mind, WWE, if Ring of Honor started offering $1 million deals, they'd probably start offering $1.5 million deals. I mean, this is what WWE does. So what you have to hope for with Ring of Honor is that they can make the most of the talent that they've got, that every now and then they can find somebody, whether it be from AEW or WWE, who feels, you know what, I'm making $1 million a year, but man, I'm just not doing anything with this sport that I love. And I'm not going to work for $100,000. I'm not going to take a $900,000 pay cut. But if Ring of Honor is going to offer me $750,000, you know what? I'll take that $250,000 pay cut because $750,000 a year is still great. I'll go to Ring of Honor. That's what you have to hope for. But that's not happening anytime soon.
You got to adapt and be flexible now. You got to change up what you were because you're not any of those things you once were. And that's where a new set of eyeballs sitting at Delirious' side could help. You know, you got Sinclair there. You got Todd Sinclair, that is. You got Bubba Dudley. You got I don't know who else is involved in actually plucking away at things, but a new set of eyeballs, some new fresh thinking, because you are limited and handcuffed in so many ways by your parent company and by your setup and the way that you are. Here's a chance. And here's a chance to go out there and maybe make the most of what you got. You're going to have Brody King at some point come back. It's time to make him a single star, pushing him in that direction. You know, you have excitement with these luchadors and with the Mexican guys you got coming in. Dragon Lee could be a star in any language. What are you going to do with him? You got to try to maximize with what you got because times have changed. And when guys come and go, back in the day, maybe you wouldn't have taken a chance at a guy who you could only get for a couple dates. Maybe you ought to change your thinking right now and look at yourself sometimes as a big indie instead of a player on the scale that
AEW stand by.
And WWE is.
Back in a moment, Observer Live.
You are listening to Wrestling Observer Live with Bryan Alvarez and Mike Sempervive on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. So, one other thing I got to mention about Ring of Honor back in the day is if you look at like all of the biggest stars of the 2000s, I mean, every single one of them was somebody who, at the time, WWE would never even have considered hiring. Now, it doesn't matter who you are, how tall you are, how short you are, how fat, skinny, whatever. Like, if they think that you could be a player of any magnitude, they're just going to try to sign you. They'll sign anybody nowadays. This is no disrespect to anybody. I'm just telling you, they'll sign anybody. So, it's just going to be very hard. You can't go back, is my point. And this person here says, Marty Scurll news absolutely blew my mind when it came out yesterday. Feels like ROH is desperate. No, they're just, it's not desperation. It's like they had an opportunity, and they negotiated with the guy, and the guy was willing to come back and also work on the booking committee, and he's got a lot of great ideas. And Hunter had been doing this job, like I said, for a decade. And if anybody thinks that Delirious is sad about this, I mean, I can't tell you for sure, but I guess he's probably overjoyed. I mean, he's gone from being the head booker, where no matter what happened, it was like he will either get all of the praise or he's going to get all of the blame. And, of course, it's 2020 now, so he's only going to get all the blame. So he's gone from that position, not to mention, like, imagine having to book a promotion week to week, all the television, pay-per-views, everything, for over a decade. Wow. So now he's still with the company. He gets to train the people at the wrestling school, which he loves. He gets to input his ideas. He gets to help format television or tweak ideas or whatever, but he's not the head guy. That responsibility is gone. I mean, quite frankly, if I were Delirious, I'd be over the moon with this. And they have a new person in there that's coming up with ideas, and Scurll gets to go out there, and he's guaranteed to have fresh new ideas because he hasn't done this before in Ring of Honor. And people love the shows this weekend that he helped put together. I mean, I wouldn't call this desperation. It's just like they had an opportunity, and they thought this is going to cover a lot of bases. So, hey, let's go for it. And so far, I mean, at least artistically, people have been very happy with it.
Yeah, it's only been one weekend, but okay, good. We've not, actually, and I take that back. We've not only had the one weekend, we've had the NWA stuff that has been dribbling in, and I guess has been a hint leading into this stuff. When all this showed up the last time around, we got the NWA's pay-per-view coming up on the 24th. You know, they both tape at center stage. Obviously, that's where all this stuff went down this weekend. So, yay, there you go. And, you know, I mentioned, you know, as I trailed off the air there at the end of the last segment about possibly changing to some things up as far as how they look at talent goes. And in some ways, Jeff Cobb is forcing that upon them. He hasn't signed a new deal, but he's willing to hang out. And he's got other interests that he wants to fulfill, but he hasn't closed the door on Ring of Honor. He's working dates for them. You know, they're probably going to have to be more open to doing some things like that. And, of course, obviously protecting their back door to make sure that they don't get screwed over in any exchange or anything like that. But they're, you know, they still hold a lot of cards, and they still have a lot of people under contract. They're going to have to develop people. They had the tie-in at one point with the Monster Factory. They've been working nonstop with the Maryland Championship Wrestling for quite some time. They're going to have to develop some people. The women's division, they're going to have to figure out what they want to do with that. I would just jettison that thing altogether if they haven't really already. I mean, it's kind of quietly gone away. They really need to take a hard look at that and decide on what they want to do there. And again, we'll have to see the way the year goes on, but NWA needed a little bit of life after some things went down with them and Cornette. They're going to seemingly have that with Ring of Honor, working with them again. ROH has got some you know, shine behind them. New Japan has kicked off their year, so, you know, everything kind of hope springs eternal right now, I guess, unless you're a youngster watching NXT because you don't exist.
This person says, every time I watch Tyler Bate, he just gets better every single time. Match of the night every show. If he isn't a legit star in this company somewhere in the future, they've done it all wrong. Well, I could say that about 50 guys. Last night, NXT Takeover UK, I really liked the show. Thought the Tyler Bate, Jordan Devlin match was just unbelievable. I had so many people live in the building that were texting me right after the match ended, just saying, you've got to watch this match, match of the year candidate. It's good as stuff at the Tokyo Dome, unbelievable. It was a fantastic match. And yes, Tyler Bate, Jordan Devlin, they're awesome. I've been putting over Tyler Bate for like 4 years now. I mean, nothing against Pete Dunne, But when they had those Tyler Bate, Pete Dunne matches, like all I heard was everybody talking about how great Pete Dunne was. And I was like, dude, Pete Dunne is great, but like, look at Tyler Bate for crying out loud. Here he is just tearing the house down here. He's unbelievable. The Walter-Joe Coffey match, I thought that was a very good match. Dave hated it. It was too long. It didn't need to go 25 minutes. But if you want to see two big dudes just beating the absolute hell out of each other, I really liked that match. Ladder match was a ladder match. It was a crazy one. I wasn't totally enamored with it, but I'm not going to call it a bad match. It was a good match. They worked their asses off. That was a lot of fun. The three-way women's match I thought was very good, except for they did every single three-way finish you've ever seen in your whole entire life. I'm not even joking. Babyface gets the pin, but the heel throws him off and steals the pin. I mean, we've seen it a million times. I don't need to see that at NXT. I see it enough on the main roster. And they did the same exact finish in another three-way on the Impact show on Sunday night. And then Trent Seven Eddie Dennis was just it was just a fine opener. So I really liked NXT UK. I don't know about everybody else. I mean, I think everybody unanimously loved the Tyler Bate match, but man, oh man. This person here says, how is Tyler Bate so unbelievably great at 22? I can only imagine how good he's going to be in a few more years. Jordan Devlin, also one of the best out of the UK scene. I had goosebumps watching that match yesterday. Yeah, well, Tyler Bate started young. Although I think Jordan Devlin started when he was 12. So, I mean, these guys have been doing it for a long, long time. And I'm not a big fan of, kids 11, 12. I mean, not just like the girls in Stardom, but, I mean, Buddy Wayne's son was in the ring doing matches at 11. And he's actually doing fine. I mean, he's not doing like a full schedule or anything like that. He just does a match here and there. But that's very, very young. I mean, at the same time, I guess I was sort of doing the same thing when I was young. Nothing stupid, but I mean, when you start young, you end up really good at 22. That's all I can tell you. And Tyler Bate, Jordan Devlin, a lot of those guys. It turned out awesome, Mike. Thank you very much.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't go, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see the whole show yet. I did see the main event with Walter, and here's the thing. With Coffey, I didn't think it was a bad match at all. I thought it was, if the Sami Callihan and Tessa match was masturbatory as far as gross spots go and extending out the baiting of, Sami Callihan just, healing it up and drawing it out. That's kind of with Walter, you expect that with a lot of his matches with some of the chops and stuff like that. There was a point at this match I was thinking it's kind of like, and I'll probably get killed for this, like Kenta Miyahara matches where he's really good, but I don't need to see every match go 35 minutes, and I kind of got that feeling during this match as well, too. And I didn't get the chance to see the rest of the card. To me, it was like 3 stars good. It was a good match. You don't have to go flying out of your way to go see it or anything like that. I would say to fly the Undisputed Era all the way over there to do that show-closing angle is insane to me, but it worked because it was a great exclamation point on the match, I thought. I thought it was a real surprise. The crowd was obviously nuclear for it, so it worked that way, but it was, kind of amazing that they did it, and I'll have to see the rest of the show. I feel bad about NXT UK. That's probably, I think it's the last time I watched an NXT UK show was the last takeover they had, and I remember watching the TV before the takeover, the last couple of TVs to catch up before that takeover show. And I'm thinking, it's like, man, this is really good. I wish I had time to watch it. Of course, I haven't watched it since. I heard the pre-show, the preview that they were doing, the hype video that they were doing for Takeover 2 was going to be really good. I saw it. It was excellent. It was awesome. That's something people should probably go out of their way to see. I think that was great. And then, the one match, again, I only saw the main event. It was good. The crowd was live. I want to see more. But time is an issue, and that's just one of the biggest problems with NXT UK, and I don't know if there's an answer for it, but I don't know how it does on the network.
Yeah, I got an answer, actually.
Go ahead.
Listen, if their idea is, takeovers are always 2.5 hours, and they're always 5 matches, and you end up having matches that end up having to go too long, well, there's an easy solution. There's 2 of them. One is you do a shorter show, which I don't think they're going to do. Or 2, it's okay to have 6 matches. I mean,
well, no, but
there's no law against it. I mean, you don't have to just do 5 matches on a takeover.
Oh, sure, but I'm talking more of I don't know what you can do as far as to try to get any oomph or visibility or attention behind NXT UK. You know, we talk about how you
It's
can
not
kind
going
of
to happen.
spark.
It's impossible.
That's the thing, how you can kind of spark NXT, and we talk about the position that Ring of Honor is in, and it's like with NXT UK, and I don't want to insult anybody who's watching internationally or who's watching in the UK, Scotland, Ireland, wherever, and Germany, and is really into NXT UK programming. I'm sorry, I just have to look at it from my point of view and everything that we're killed with over here, and it's just too bad because the little bit I see, you know, at the very least, it's good, if not great,
Well,
like a lot of the stuff.
Let me explain this to everybody, okay? So here's a deal with NXT UK, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, or really anything else in any business or walk of life, okay? It's just like wrestling. It's just like if you try to make every single person a star, nobody's going to be a star. And when you are WWE and you decide that you're going to have Raw, SmackDown, NXT, 205 Live, NXT UK, you know they're going to try an NXT Japan, okay? The reality is you can't make all of these a big deal. It's impossible. If you try, like, you're gonna hurt Raw and SmackDown, okay? So what NXT UK is and what NXT Japan is going to be, and 205 Live is kind of different, but what these things are, it's not even about making them like a big deal to WWE. What it is we're trying to make sure that nobody from the UK scene takes off and hurts us in the UK. We're trying to make sure that nobody in Japan is going to take off and hurt us in Japan. Like, they tried to go into Mexico, but unfortunately for them, I mean, as it turns out, the fans in Mexico actually want to watch Lucha Libre more than they want to watch WWE, unless the Undertaker's there, and he's not there all the time. So that's really what this is. I mean, NXT UK is just going to be like a promotion under the WWE umbrella, and they're going to get these takeover events, and they're going to get this TV. But, I mean, it's not going to be more than that because it can't be. It just can't be.
Well, I mean, it could be, but I understand what you're saying because you're right. It's the billboard effect. It's what Coke and Pepsi do. It's why they have 97 brands of something. I remember when Smirnoff Ice came out with all the different flavors, and it's like, okay, does Pina Colada not sell? Guess what? We have green apple ready to go. Green apple not going to work out. We have pineapple mango ready to go, and it's like you never lose that spot on the shelf. You just keep refilling it with something else, trying to block everybody else out, and I understand that that's what they're trying to do, but you know, these guys, they still have merch to sell. It's still a product. It's still wrestling. And it's, you know, we're talking a little bit about it today on the show. And it's like, you know, it's too bad. Again, the little bit I catch of it, I wish you could, you know, they could get the word out there more. It's just too bad they can't, although they probably should try to figure out a way. And frankly, they should really blend NXT and NXT UK together.
First says it was definitely the worst UK takeover. I felt the main event and ladder match were too long, more of a 3 to 3.25 star main event. Good, but not justified in its length. Well, it was too long, but I think it was better than 3. And finally, who does Big Show turn on and punch out first tonight, Owens or Joe? Well, history says that's a decent chance of happening. And you know what? I'm going to tell you another reason why I think it's happening tonight. Back in a moment, Observer Live.
You are listening to Wrestling Observer Live with Bryan Alvarez and Mike Sempervive on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. So this person wanted to know who the Big Show is going to turn on tonight. The Big Show, this is no joke. He's on his way to having turned 40 times in his wrestling career, okay? I swear to God, the number right now is like at 34, 35. That's how many times he's turned in his wrestling career. So it seems inevitable that this guy's probably going to turn. And the match tonight, announced for Raw, we've got AJ versus Randy Orton, Aleister Black versus Buddy Murphy, Rusev Lashley, and Seth Rollins and the AOP versus Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, and the Big Show in a fist fight. And they're not telling you what a fist fight is. I guess they think that that's going to make you tune in if you don't know what it is. Like maybe you'll think they're shooting, okay? But When the Big Show came back, like the very first thing I thought was how every year, not every single year, obviously, but it happens over and over again. On the road to WrestleMania, whichever babyface is getting a shot at the title at WrestleMania has to have a 2-month feud with the Big Show. It happens all the time. It's like all Vince knows. Babyface has got to get his title shot at WrestleMania. It's got to go through a giant. It's got to slay a giant. And lo and behold, January kicks off, and who's back but the Big Show? Remember how many times Roman Reigns had to go through the Big Show on his way to WrestleMania? Happened like 3 times.
Beanstalk.
So, I mean, if I don't know if Kevin Owens is going to do. I don't know if they're doing Kevin Owens, Brock Lesnar at Mania. I mean, I kind of doubt it. But if they are, like, Big Show's turning on Kevin Owens because now Kevin Owens will have to feud for 2 months with the Big Show because he got to slay a giant on the road to WrestleMania. So anyway, that's tonight. And also tonight is myself and Dave, Wrestling Observer Radio, talking about Raw and all the news. And in a few moments, I'm going to hop on with Filthy Tom Lawler for Filthy 4 Daily. It's going to be a fun time. Lots of great stuff. Check it out. Subscribers at WrestlingObserver.com. And that's it from here. Thanks, Mike, as always. Callers and listeners, everybody in the studio. Talk to you next time. Wrestling Observer Live.